So good morning and welcome to NRF 2025, retail's big show, and obviously from the food service tech stage. My name is Rob Grimes, and I'm the CEO of the International Food and Beverage Technology Association, otherwise known as the IFBTA. And we are thrilled once again to be the NRF's concept partner of the Food Service Innovation Zone, that way, and also known as the FIZ, so if we refer to it that way, you'll know what we're talking about, that provides a spotlight on food and beverage technology. Over the next 3 days, you're going to hear from a number of thought leaders across the industry and have access to innovative technology in and around the center of the plate. We appreciate you joining us today, and I'm going to welcome our speakers to the stage. So while we're doing that, I get to ad-lib a few things, which I'm probably not supposed to do. Guys, take a seat. So this is really a thrilling thing for us to have food service recognized here at the NRF's Retail's Big Show. We actually started last year, for those of you who were here, we've been doing this for 6 years. 2 years as a conference, off-site, and then 4 years, including during COVID, the year that they were here during COVID, with a session, and we've gone from the back area up to the front. Last year, we were in the room next door, but we outgrew that. And obviously, we have cooking and things going on. So we've doubled our size on the other side, and we're going to go ahead and go from there. And also, I would expect over time, you'll see more of food service innovation being in Asia and some other places as well. So I want to thank you all for joining us and having an interest in food service. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and lead us to our panel. And so I'm going to ask our panelists to introduce themselves and their company. And then we're going to have a conversation up here about the intersection of retail and food service. So AJ, why don't we start with you?
Awesome, thanks Rob. So I'm AJ Francavilla. I'm the VP of Digital Innovation for Sodexo, so food service and facilities management company.
Vikram Badwa, lovely to see you all here. So I work for Starbucks International. My role at Starbucks ultimately is looking after retail platforms across the international business. Prior to Starbucks, I was at Yum. I've also done a stint at McDonald's and another company based out of South Africa called Nando's. So I've worked most of my professional career in and around the food service space. And it's a fun time to be in that sector.
Hi, good morning. I'm Michael Verdeska. I'm the Chief Information Officer of Murphy USA. We run Murphy USA gas stations as well as Quick Check in the New Jersey and New York area, so you may be familiar with them. Quick Check's very food service oriented. Musa is much more fuel oriented, but transitioning a little and learning from our Quick Check little sister, I'd say. I've been at Murphy USA for about 4 years. Prior to that, I was a CIO in the restaurant business for probably about 14 years. So very familiar with the food space. I'm very familiar with Rob and the IFBTA, and glad to be here.
And actually, Michael has just been elected to the board of the IFBTA. We haven't put that announcement out yet, but we will, but you just heard it here. And Vic is actually on the board as well, and AJ participates in many of our sessions and is a big supporter as well. So I want you to know that this panel was put together with a lot of thought. And I don't know if you realize or recognize this, but I think it's very important to point out that each one of the panelists are involved actually, or have been involved in food service and retail. Some of them might actually be considered retailers, not necessarily food service operators. I know there's always that discussion about Starbucks. Are they in retail? Are they in food? Are they in both? And then you have Murphy USA, which certainly has the C stores and has a lot of different pieces. And then obviously with AJ, I mean, you're running retail and you're running food service and you're running all kinds of things. So we did this thoughtfully so we get a cross section. So I'd like to start by asking the question of where do you all see the touch points between the industries, the similarities, or why do the industries come together? And Michael, maybe you want to start with that since you made the transition from pure food service into retail.
Yeah, I grew up into retail, went into restaurants. I've always called them stores. You get in trouble with the core food people. It's a restaurant, it's not a store, but it's retail. We have registers, we're selling things, you know, many of us have a counter. They're so interrelated. The technologies are very similar and there's a lot of synergies. We're doing the same things in loyalty. We're all trying to get share of wallet and we all are trying to reach that consumer. So I've seen a seamless transition. It's a very similar industry. Food service had some more complications, I think. And then if you're in fuel, we have our own complications, which are fun. But yeah, I see a ton of synergies across retail and food.
Vic?
Yeah, no, I think it's a really good answer. So, for me, looking at retail, historically, pre-COVID, I'd look at the retail industry and be quite envious, actually, of some of the innovations that were coming through retail. But I think the response to COVID, actually, and the complexity that came about from brands having to adopt delivery and go to mobile order at a rapid rate, actually meant that there was a lot of great tech innovation that came out of the hospitality industry, where now actually I think there's a greater opportunity for kind of cross-pollination from a tech point of view. Rob touched on, is Starbucks a retailer or is it a hospitality brand? We call ourselves a retail business, actually, internally, a premium retailer. So there are so many, right? Everybody's got a POS. There are additional complexities when it comes to production for food service compared to a typical retail, but more and more, I can see more and more similarities. Also, conceptually now, you've got a lot of brands that are bringing together food service and retail to provide more of an experience, right? You've got the likes of Ralph Lauren with their coffee shops. There's Louis Vuitton doing pop-ups with like coffee and food pairings to like link back to signature products. So there's a lot of fun stuff happening where there's more and more crossover.
And also, once you leave the U.S., a lot of the group companies are in both businesses, especially in Asia, where you see the retailers are also in the food service business, and you have these huge groups that are doing that. AJ, your perspective is a little bit different because you're actually running all of these things. You might not be running Murphy Oil in there, but you are certainly probably having Starbucks in some of your places. But you have complex challenges of having to have retail, having food service, all operating together, right? And then bringing that together and then having to manage the multiple brands.
Yeah, so I think for us, we're with you in the hospital when you're born. You may be in K-12 with us, you're in corporate services, you're in higher ed, and then all of a sudden you may be in senior living with us. So across that journey, we really do take a retail approach to understand each one of those touch points. So I think we also see ourselves as that retailer mindset with that strong food background. But we also create experiences. So if you're dining with us in a college campus 21 meals a week, or you're in corporate services dining with us in your canteen, we have to create those kind of living, learning experiences along the way. And then to that point, how do you get all those back of house systems? How do you get all that loyalty and that mapping across disparate systems doing business because we're doing a lot of work on behalf of our clients.
Which means that you have to follow what they may be telling you have to use for reporting, for standards and everything else. But at the same time, you have all of your own reporting. How many different brands do you actually represent around the world?
I think just in our mobile ordering platform alone, we have about 80 different national retail brands that are in that platform. And then on top of that, you layer in all those local brands and those constituencies across the 40 plus countries we operate in.
So we're at a disadvantage as a panel this morning because the show has just started. So we haven't had the opportunity to walk the show. So what I'd like to do is ask our panel a question that it would be great if we could all get together at the end of this to have this conversation. But every year when I go to shows, whether it's a CES or it's an NRF or FS Tech or whatever the shows are that I'm going to, I always like to look up at the top of the aisles and see what the key word is. We're in the booth. So for a couple of years we had AI in every booth. Then we've had data analytics. We've had big data. We've got all kinds of things that we can all think back. So I'm just sort of curious before any of us get to walk the whole show. What do you guys think the key word is going to be this year?
Who wants to go?
I think there'll be naturally a lot of talk about Gen AI this year. And I think it's a really interesting space, right? And actually from a hospitality point of view, something that the industry isn't really tapping into as much as we could be. We are typically laggards a lot of the time to these kind of new innovations. But it'll be interesting to see what a lot of the big tech providers are pitching.
I think coming off of CES too, this past week I was just there and we had a lot of data, right? We've always seen the big data conversations here. We've had the machine learning. Now you're getting the Gen AI, but it's really leveraging it for that personalization on how do you start making those meaningful conversations, not just that we have the data about you, how am I giving you the right content and the right loyalty, the right scheme that really gets you engaged with the brand.
Yeah, I kind of agree with AJ. I think it's really, we've done a lot in the data space and the AI space, but it's all the end goal is personalization. And for us, it's share of wallet, right? How do we make the right value and the right offers at the right time for those people to get them back in the stores one more time,
So I asked this question before the holidays when I was doing some podcasts with people about it, and personalization was the number one word that came up that they saw, especially when you're in food service and they're talking about everything from putting your name in the top of the coffee and the foam to the personalized experiences, and even some of the tech that's sitting out here, even that new sauce machine that's out here from Kraft Heinz, 200 different things is personalization, right? So they think that's going to be something of the key thing. So, Michael, Vic said something, but I want to see if you agree with this particular thing. The food service industry has always been described as being behind retail in technology. And Vic said, COVID comes around, we're doing ordering and delivery and stuff, and all of a sudden people are following us. Since you've been in both camps, and you probably had that awakening moment pre-COVID when you made the change, how do you feel that the industry leadership in tech, and what are the key areas that you think the retail may be teaching food service and food service may be teaching retail?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I worked at Williams-Sonoma when we did the first online wedding registries. This is way before online ordering, right? I'm aging myself, I get it, but retail was definitely ahead. I do think with the old delivery and things that, as you said, restaurants really leapfrogged. But historically, the retail has invested a lot more in the data and marketing, and I think restaurants have caught up. So right now, I see there's so much overlap, and because we're all dealing with distributed labor workforces and multi-unit retail and distributed consumers, and how do you talk to consumers? So I think there's probably as much from each other that we're learning. I don't see either as kind of being out there, but it's a fun time because there is so much, and we're still struggling because honestly, I haven't figured out how to deliver fuel yet. So if you guys can help me figure out that outside of that piece. So I think fuel is actually behind retail because we have that constraint. But yeah, we're definitely learning a lot, and things are.
But there's a lot to be learned on that. That's a really interesting comment they made about fuel, because there are some people that will question what happens with EV. Yep. And when these stations and places have to turn to other business models that are there, and fuel may or may not be, never's a long time, okay? So,
yeah.
We could look out 10, 15 years.
Even in California, there's more combustion engines sold every year than EVs, so that we've got to.
But there are a lot of things there, but I think about drive-throughs.
Yep.
It was many years, obviously, you were with McDonald's, early on, and main business in drive-through, right? And all of a sudden you see them in convenience stores and pharmacies and groceries and everywhere, right? And that's probably a technology where we might have led from food service. Did you want to?
No, I think for us, we have interesting perspectives because we're in client sites, we're in client facilities. So how do we start blending and using some of the tech that's in the marketplace? So I think we operate like 2 drive-throughs in the U.S. That's not our big strong suit with us. But when you go into the canteen, how do we make sure you get the right food at the time and kind of that seamlessness that you're expecting? So we're always watching the retail side to see what's coming. I think you see a lot more of the line busting, the portability, and all those pieces coming out of traditional POS that we can then adopt and adapt into our space.
What's really interesting about that is that you pointed out that people are dealing with your company from when they're in the hospital being born till the other end of that, right? But also, there's a lot going on in the world in waste and sustainability as well, especially when it comes within the healthcare environment. In there, do you want to talk? And it's new technologies that are coming out that ended up in micro markets, by the way.
So for us, sustainability is a key driver, not only just what is the impact of the food that we're producing, but waste reduction up front, right? So if we can reduce that waste and produce more in a timely manner, then we're going to get ahead of that. So we've done the work around something that we call waste watch with Lean Path. So we look at that and understand what our production is, what's the better forecasting through that big data again, what are we expecting, and then how do we reduce the waste and then monitor and kind of gamify it a little bit inside of the organization to drive that down. But I think you get into patient dining, you get into campus dining with all you care to eat facilities. It's really around what are we driving to the right production? Because if we're making food that no one's eating, we're making food the guests aren't enjoying, that we're just throwing that away. So I think for us, it's really how we leverage the tech up front to make that a little bit more of a seamless and predictable production for us.
So Vic, Starbucks gets a lot of press in many different areas, and around the world, coffee. I learned this in Singapore a couple months ago, listening to Technomic do a report. Coffee is the fastest growing thing around the world, regionally, everywhere, right? And as coffee retail, as services you pointed out. How are you? But Starbucks is known for engaging with the customer, the loyalty program, the app, the online ordering. Where do you see the future of for retailers to start being able to take advantage of the same technologies to gain customer loyalty and engagement with people that are, coming in and going and things like that?
Yeah, it's a great question, right? I thought you were going to go down the sustainability route there, but you totally pivoted.
Well, we could if you want.
No, it's fine. I was, look, I think from a rewards perspective, we've got a huge rewards program. One of the big challenges we've got actually is that the rewards programs that we operate around the world are isolated on a market by market basis. So if you're a North American rewards customer, you can't come to the UK and use rewards. And I guess that's a strategic choice for Starbucks around whether we want to join up that community, because there's a wealth of data, and regardless of whether you're a licensee or you're a direct Starbucks owned and operated business like a lot of the stores here in the US, ultimately the customer data belongs to Starbucks. So there's a huge opportunity for us to, one, within the kind of traditional store footprint, but then also within our retail business, where we're selling, packaged goods within grocery stores, petrol stations. How can we link you into the rewards program through that route, through some anonymized route, and also through third-party delivery, understand who you are? And so there's a lot happening within the organization to kind of to bring all those lines together, ultimately, because there's a massive customer data play that will enable us to deliver on that personalization piece that was talked about a little bit.
And that's not all, you're not on an island. So you also have a customer data play that exists within the partner environments. I imagine how much data is available in an airport, right? Between the airline, the operator of the airport itself, and then the people that have the retail and the food and beverage there, right? Or, you have all that, right? You have a lot of data. So there's really a partnership in sharing and using data as well. There's a lot more data available.
I think just adding on to that for us, if you think about transitioning from college into corporate, we want to understand those behaviors too, and how do we get them in? So we've made a big strategic effort to really start harmonizing our POS and our loyalty data, because similar to you, we want to understand where those guests are coming from so we can be better prepared as they get into their next journey and next cycle. Hopefully not at the end one though.
Right. So Michael, loyalty, customers, gas, you're really sort of changing the environment. How are the customers getting engaged?
Yeah, so we've actually been leading in the loyalty space with Murphy USA. We have a Murphy Driver Awards. We have 4 or 5 million members, a lot of active participation, and they all answer surveys. It's crazy. We do a survey, we get close to 1 million consumers. They tell us what kind of car they drive, how many miles they drive, how many gallons they buy, what cigarettes they smoke, how much all that. It's really amazing. They really trust us. But we only get a certain percentage of our transactions opting in. So this year we're rolling out a new payment gateway, and we're going to use payment tokens. And so in the back end, even if you haven't opted in and told us you're a loyalty customer, we know every time you come, at least if you use the same payment method, and then we can treat you and talk to you the same way. So as you mentioned, partners, we share a ton of data with our CPG partners. Companies like MasterCard help us with transaction information, the tobacco suppliers, and we can offer coupons to our consumers based on what they buy, because we know what they buy that the CPG partners pay for, which is great for us, great for our consumers. But just tying all that data together and trying to figure out each customer and getting that right.
You're receiving data from the CPG partners.
Yep, and we're sharing.
But you're also sharing data, right?
Yep.
And so is there some sort of practical use or experience that you're able to share, just sort of how you, not maybe the impact today, but where that might in fact go?
Really where I think it's been, and because in the fuel business, we have our own point of sale, so we've had some capabilities. Others are now, unfortunately, catching up to us. We were ahead. Because of the way we can offer those coupons, discounts, et cetera, to our consumers, we've had a huge impact, especially in the tobacco area, but also in CPG, because we can identify our customers that buy Gatorade, that buy Monster, that buy whatever. So getting promotions from those vendors and offering to consumers, because we tie it end to end and own that customer experience, has been hugely valuable for us.
Yeah, I mean, that's, obviously a challenge, but it is valuable. But it shows those partnerships. Now, a lot of times in the food service business, I find that there's sort of a gap in information and information sharing when you have broadliners who are doing delivery and you have to order separately from them, then the systems you use in the store, and then the information they have. Sometimes it's not actually coming together.
I mean, I think for us, we try to look at that personalization and go back to, did they order a Gatorade? Great, now what am I serving up? And is it in the assortment and in the planogram? And how do we make those better pairings? Because the CPG providers certainly know, Pepsi, Coke, et cetera, what goes well with what products. So how do we start leveraging those promotions upstream and then get them into the right customer's hands. Because if you're not drinking energy drinks, I don't know if I necessarily need to target market you as much, but certainly the Gatorade folks, the Reese's cups, et cetera, of how they pair so well.
Michael touched on something actually that's a big challenge in this space, right? Which is just the percentage of customers that opt out of these programs. And it can be really significant, right? Like as much as 75%. So it could totally kill the business case for personalization. So, what I've found in practice is if you can offer an app, a digital experience to customers that is where kind of the need to notify the customer and the benefit of that is baked in at kind of a foundational level, people, you not forced, but people are more likely to opt in, which gives you the opportunity to market directly to them. And that's a huge thing that you need to think about as you think about your strategy in this space, because naturally a lot of people will opt out.
Yeah, I think a lot of people have app fatigue, and if you're in marketing, I apologize. I don't read your emails. Even if you're a technology vendor, I don't read your emails, so sorry, I get too many. So you got to figure out, hey, how do you communicate at the right time where it's actually interesting for the customer? And so we're doing things like talking to them at the pump and things when they're there, because they're not going to read an email at the time they need to buy gas, right? So how do you find that exact right way to...
Right, and then when you're using voice AI and things, how do you get your voice? There may actually be a voice in there that's talking to them. But, nothing ever, you get these deja vu moments, and nothing is ever, really brand new. The concepts may have started a long time ago. And I think about the hotel industry, which of course, the IFPTA represents as well. And, with less and less people having to go to the front desk, that interaction with the guest, but yet you want them to use the facilities. And once they enter that room, that is their home, right? And you need to personalize and you need to communicate, and they need to be part of the digital experience, and be connected when they're there. So that is a challenge for all of us to how do we, and maybe we learn from an industry like that or gaming or something like that, but how do we keep them engaged and wanting to be engaged and not opting out?
Look, for that connection within a store, and I know you work part-time at a Starbucks, so you get this. That connection between the barista and the customer, regardless of how they order, right? Even if they're a mobile order and pay customer, is kind of a core principle within the Starbucks offering, right? And so it's incredibly important. And that's why things like self-order kiosk aren't necessarily fit for purpose within a Starbucks operating environment. So making the right choices from a technology perspective and actually enriching that overall experience whilst trying to take as much friction out as possible is really the sweet spot. And that's not true for every brand, right? Like McDonald's is a totally different proposition where it's all about, and same with Yum, that the target's to be 100% digital. That doesn't necessarily play into the kind of Starbucks mantra, being a bit more of being a premium offering where it is about the connection.
So I'd just like to add to that and ignore the little side comment that was made there. But we do have a challenge with technology going forward of losing our voice and losing what makes us different. I'd like to turn the word personalization the opposite way around and discuss this as each one of our companies have a culture and we have a voice in how we get that voice out. Now, maybe challenging for Sodexo who's got to represent so many voices, right? And they may not know who's behind it, right, directly. But how do we maintain that voice when you're dealing digitally with customers of what made you who you are, and your culture? And by the way, that goes when the founders have left, passed away, or whatever. How do you maintain that?
Yeah, so I think for us, we're still a hospitality company at heart, right? When you walk in, it's beyond just the ordering experience, it's that last mile. So we look at what's that seamless pickup experience, what is the in-store kiosk experience, what is that all you care to eat, which is not going to be necessary through digital. So we still have plenty of touch points along the way, and it goes back to the initial core training of our team of how do you engage with the customers in this new digital mindset.
And there are touch points. People forget that we have touch points. Even if they're ordering, as Vic said, on a kiosk, or they're out at the pump, and maybe play, we still have a touch point because there is a point to which delivery and things come together, right?
So our menu boards may have evolved from menu boards to marketing boards, more personalized offers up on those versus showing you the whole menu. If you're in your phone and you're going through, you're not gonna need that menu board as much, but I'm sure you guys have some personalization that goes on in those digital touch points.
Yeah, absolutely. So my first job ever was at the Ritz-Carlton back in high school. And they teach you, this is personalization 1.0. any way to find out the customer's name, right? You read the luggage tag if you're a bellman, you whatever. There's so many ways to find out their name and greet them by name, and it goes a long way. So one of the models, and I won't take credit for it, but our Quick Check stores, when we required it, already did this, and I thought it was fabulous. This is that they have 2 traditional registers and 3 to 4, we call them assisted checkout, because we serve a lot of age-verified tobacco, alcohol, whatever. But the way it's set up, it's completely self-service, but the cashiers are very trained to still engage. They still say good morning. They still interact with you and make you feel welcome and thank you for your business, even though you're doing full self-service checkout. So it's a great combination of the customer can choose convenience or getting help, but yet they feel like they're still getting that personal convenience in the conversation. It's also a huge coffee thing. It's better coffee than Starbucks. But not that I'm prejudiced. But we're building a Starbucks in my town. I live in a town without a Starbucks, so thank you. We're finally getting one. We're very excited. But it's important because we get those people that come in every morning for their coffee, right? So you want to know those people. You want to recognize them. You want to tell them thank you for coming in. So I thought that was a great model of how do you balance technology and convenience with actual.
And by the way, I would point out that I think we underestimate the convenience industry in general, which is why a lot of them are finding their way in the food service innovation zone here. Because they are the hub that people come together in many neighborhoods and in many places, where there may not be a Starbucks or a McDonald's or something. They become the hub. That is also probably one of the greatest opportunities of expansion between food service and retail, in general, out there because of number of locations and things that are out there.
I'll just give another example of something similar that I kind of see more and more in the hospitality space. Is you mentioned drive-through before. And like 50% of the Starbucks US businesses comes through drive-through, so it's a significant chunk of the business. There's a real opportunity to remove friction and to speed up convenience in that form factor for us, right? So if we can identify the guest at point of order, if they've got a linked payment method and rewards, we can effectively totally streamline the end of the journey, but also as they're ordering, personalize ultimately what's being shown to them on the digital signage at point of order, right? So we can greet them by name, we can upsell based on what they like, based on preferences of how we see them as a consumer in kind of categories that they might fit into from a rewards point of view. I know Taco Bell are doing this now in the US. There's some really interesting stuff, and actually that real-time personalization at point of order, I think will make people feel more connected to the brand because you'll feel like they get me. They're not marketing something to me that I know I don't like, but also ultimately will drive up average check as well.
I want to point out something that was just said here because it occurs to me that having been to so many different events and shows in different industries around the world every year, that it used to be in the restaurant industry, we were only talking about speed of service.
Yeah.
And Vic has just used the word frictionless or taking a look at that actually is a key word because some of those friction points are the problem that we have between our employees, and our associates with the customers, and we're creating friction in there. So we're almost to the end of our session. So what I would like to do is just ask each one of our panelists just to share what they believe the vision of the next 12 months is, or what you hope to see, that's going to be out there. And please, AJ, feel free to put a point or two in there for CES as well. So
no worries. Yeah. So CES this year was really big on, again, a lot more of that in-home automation and all those other pieces. I was joking, if I see one more pool cleaning robot, it's like 40 of them this year. But I think the big thing you're seeing is how do you get the tech and all these great Gen AI pieces into your hands? We saw smart glasses, we saw live translations. But I think a lot of that is just becoming consumer ready now. And then when you get to the commercial side is how do we get our teams, our frontline enabled with these micro trainings with the language of their choosing, and just start upskilling our folks to this new digital transformation because we are taking some of that human element away. And how do we start repurposing it? So for me, it's really how do we get our people to be more digitally centric and then really focus back on the guest and the front lines.
And using consumer-based technologies to do it.
Look, I think there's a lot of great technology, right? I think for the big brands, it's about working out where to focus, right? Because you could, there's a lot to go after. Starbucks and Brian Niccol, our new CEO, has been talking about getting back to basics. So the upcoming year for me is not necessarily about new shiny things. It's about simplification. It's about being consistent more often. And ultimately, I think technology has got a key part to play into that, right? We've laddered in loads of complexity into our operation. And through complex systems that aren't complex to the operator, we can definitely make a significant impact.
And you can always watch the C-suite when you see the tech areas go from a retail person coming into food service or food service going into retail. That's always, I find that very interesting as well. So Michael, you get the last on this one.
Yeah, so for us, it's really two things. One, I think we've laid all the foundation of how do you do good loyalty marketing and some personalization. How do we get better at that? Because it's all about getting share of market. So there's a lot of consumer focus this year. But then the other side is really our staff and making them more efficient. So we run very small stores that sell many billions of gallons of gasoline. So how do we use technology to make them efficient? How do we give them alerts and tasks to do the right things? Because we find we ask them to do way too many things, so they're not good at all of them. So how do you get the 20% that gives you 80% of the value? And there's a lot of technology between AI and communications, and it's all merging to make really the staff better, because then that's what makes the guest experience better.
Great. Well, thank you. I want to thank our panelists. I want to thank all of you for joining us first thing out of the gate to get a taste of food service and retail tech together. I encourage you to continue the conversation and visit in the Food Service Innovation Zone. And certainly the IFPTA has a welcome desk there. We're happy to point you in any direction. And we love having conversations. We'd like to hear from you, what you're thinking as well. And you certainly are welcome to join us, as well. So thank you very much for joining us today. And please continue the conversation.